Okay, it is 4:07. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can we start, please, Clara, with a roll call?
Ma'am. Chair Embler,
Present?
Commissioner Ponte. Present. Commissioner Contrell,
Present.
Commissioner McLaughlin, Commissioner Tilka.
Here.
We have a quorum. Judith Ann is absent at the moment. She might come, and again, she may not.
And can we have the minutes note that Attorney Eschelfelder is on via Zoom? Okay.
Yes.
Can we check to make sure he's available?
Yeah, I just talked to him.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
All righty. Starting with public comments. Mr. Mayor, would you like to address us?
I'm good, thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Can we go ahead then and get a motion to approve the minutes?
They're really... The minutes would be our agenda packet items that we have, were just past items, correct? These two past items? Or really, it's the 2023-06 and then what I have, correct?
Yeah, we don't, for this meeting, we don't have minutes.
Okay, all righty, so we'll scratch that. All right, then we'll move on to old business. The purpose of our getting back together again, and I want to thank you all for coming so quickly, is to continue our discussion about Ordinance 2023-6, affectionately known as the rules by some. By now, I hope all of you have had a chance to go through the two versions, the first one that was presented by the attorney, and then the second one, Mr. Cantrell went through and made some proposed changes. I promise I want to go through each of those changes one by one, but I think it makes sense if we kind of step back and take a big picture view before we get down to the nitty-gritty. If you'll recall, I said that when I had looked through the two documents, I felt like the differences mainly centered on three areas. So we're here because our city charter does provide the Board of Commissioners to be able to just to write down our duties and powers of the Civil Service Commission by ordinance passed by the BOC. So that's what we're here for, is to address how do we want to conduct ourselves as it relates to the duties and the powers of the Civil Service Commission. So at our last meeting, the first thing that we addressed was the one difference of opinion, one of three major areas that had to do with grievance versus appeal. And as I say in the PowerPoint handout, our attorney, he clarified the purpose of the verbiage change. Yes, please. Okay. He clarified the purpose of the verbiage change, confirmed that no judge would require us to use the word grievance. After a bit of discussion, we unanimously agreed that we won't use the word grievance, rather use the termination of appeal as stated in the attorney version. Are we all comfortable with that?
Yeah.
I am too, appeal or grievance, either one. I appreciate the explanation.
Okay, all righty. So then when we go and we take a look at in the details of, Jerry, of your comments, then anytime, we've kind of knocked that out for several areas. Okay, so if we could go on to the next slide. I think the next major area of differences between the two is who can appeal to the Civil Service Commission? And we're talking in the context of disciplinary terminations. So the word in the attorney version says that this applies to regular, not at-will employees. And Jerry's version references classified, and you would like to strike at-will language. So in just a moment, I'm going to ask our attorney to clarify at-will. But before we do that, I want to just review what is the definition of a classified employee. A classified employee, per the current handbook, states it's all employees of the city not employed as a charter officer or a department head or a confidential officer, okay? And then if we look at another document, Part 2, the Code of Ordinances, Division 4, also states that these rules with regard to classified employees. So if we consider also that regular employees then would include the individual contributor, their supervisor, and managers, and not department heads, that has been the historical intent in the past of who can appeal to the Civil Service Commission. So again, it's line, individual contributor, supervisors, managers, but not department heads. And at our last meeting, the attorney explained to us his rationale about why he's recommending that we stay this way, that department heads not be included. So Rob, can I ask you please to just speak to that point and also remind us of the definition of at-will within the context of this, who can appeal to the CSC?
May I ask a question first?
Of course, yeah.
Because I also have things I'd like to present, and it's about the historical things that have been said by Mr. Hendricks, Ms. Price, and Mr. Andrews. I would like to get that out before he describes that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because I think it'd be better, we looked at all of it.
Okay.
And if anyone else has anything to say, and then can we go back at that point and address these? I made notes that we need to request clarification of at-will. I would like to address charter department head, stuff like that. I've written that, but I can address some of that in what I'd like to show too. And it's just stuff I've talked about before, just to bring it back to memory.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want-
Because sorry. Keep going through what you've got, so that way I'm making notes, hopefully everybody else is making notes, and we'll come back to the things we absolutely have to address. Is that okay?
Okay. So this is item number 2. So the question that we've got to agree upon is, should the CSC hear appeals of department heads, or should department heads appeal to the Board of Commissioners, just like the charter officers? And as I said, historically, department heads, they would appeal to the Board of Commissioners. We would not be involved. And again, the attorney in our last session opined the same, that the appeal should go to the Board of Commissioners, not the CSC. But Rob, if I'm remembering what you stated, we do have that within our power to change that. The question is, does it make sense? And I think it's pretty clear, except for the department heads. Are we clear on stating the problem here?
Yeah, but couldn't the department head have a grievance? Not
Now,
to us? Or-
Okay. If we agree that what we are addressing is the appeal process.
Appeal? Yes.
If a department head wants to appeal something,
Right?
they report to the city manager. If they want to appeal it, their course of action right now would be to go to the Board of Commissioners. We would not be involved. Rob, did I state that correctly?
Rob, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Said yes,
Oh, now we can hear you. Did you say yes, I stated that correctly?
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So, does that make sense, Paul?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to be able to address that with
Is
what
that
I'd like
in-
to show too. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Dr.
Was
Silva.
that changed from the way the procedures were previously?
No, it's
Been that way?
been that way.
Okay.
But Jerry is suggesting perhaps some alternatives, so we will go through that. It's just historically, it's gone from everybody except for the department heads would come to us. Department heads would go to the Board of Commissioners, okay, as would charter officers, which would include the clerk, the city manager, finance, and the city attorney, if they were not contract.
May I add something?
Sure.
If you look at, I believe it's Article 5, and I'd have to look right at the charter to be certain I'm quoting the right thing. Article 5 specifically lists the clerk, the attorney, the city manager, and the treasurer/finance director, I think that's what's
Correct.
listed, and the Civil Service Commission. Those are the positions that are appointed by the Board of Commissioners. As I present my stuff, I'll show you where the Hendricks, Price, and Andrews said they wanted all employees, except for those four, to appeal through the Board of Commissioners. That's what I would like to share with everyone. I can point out exactly what meeting it was and everything too, so.
Okay.
And I think it's a valid question,
Yeah,
honestly. I think it's a valid question.
And in order for us to make our decision, I think we just take a look at historically, we listen to our attorney's recommendation and other things, and we make up, we look at the pros and the cons and
So-
decide accordingly.
And can I just ask, so why don't you, is it appropriate to have you discuss your input at this point, and let's just go each comment by comment?
It's up to you guys, what you like to do. I would prefer she went through all three, and then let me state what I got to state, and then let's go hit it and get it
And
done.
have a
Good.
conversation.
And then
Is that
we'll
all
go-
right?
Yeah. So that's the second area. The third major area that I saw of differences between the two documents, the attorney version referenced in a number of places the role of the city manager, and Jerry cited a desire to change many of those to be the city clerk. And so we can go through each of those individually, but I took a moment, and in the attorney's verbiage, it says that it's the city manager who's to schedule and cancel meetings with the CSC chair approval, with the clerk providing the notification. The city manager would schedule personnel meetings that cannot wait till the next formal meeting, would agree on agenda items with the chair, request legal advice, and as I recall, this was explained, it's when there could be a conflict of interest where the city attorney could not represent both the city and an employee. And then also in the attorney version, the responsibility is to co-develop the classification and pay plans with the CSC, that is, the city manager does it. And so the main differences that I saw is that Jerry is proposing that the clerk schedule and set up meetings and schedule the personnel meetings, and that the agenda items are done with the chair. So once again, I went, in the next slide, the next one after that. Yep. So I took a look at the city clerk job description and that we got in that last packet, and it includes things like, sets up and takes care of the elections, takes care of documentation, records, public notices, prepares ordinance, notary, does training on the Sunshine Law, et cetera. So we have that job description in the packet. I also looked at the charter, and nowhere did it reference that I saw that we work directly with the clerk. Rather, the clerk is there as a support person, but in the charter, 5.7C refers to working with the city manager, and that we give advisory opinions to the city manager. That's 5.7C6. And the next piece of literature that I reviewed is that document, Part 2, Code of Ordinances, that specifically says the CSC is an advisory board that makes non-binding advisory recommendations to the city manager. So again, looking at the job description, the charter, that Code of Ordinances, I've got the historical perspective that says we should be working with the city manager, but it's up to us. Should our new rules ordinance change the responsibilities to the clerk? So,
Yes, well, there's one section, of course, it's a different section of the charter. It's section 5.2. And I don't know why they don't reference this in 5.7 as well, because it gets confusion. That's only where it just says the city clerk shall be the secretary ex officio of the Civil Service Commission.
right.
And I don't understand why they didn't add that part,
What
at
is
least to
what is
5.
the definition of an ex officio secretary? My understanding is that means you are part of it,
Well, in
but you're a
some,
non-voting
when I
member.
looked at, there are ex officio members where they can actually take part in debates and vote. And in some cities, like they had a finance ex officio, but theirs specifically said non-voting. But it's just different ways. There's just different things about them. But I participate anyway, like if I answer
Right.
questions
And that's how I see
things
it.
like that.
You participate, and we welcome that. You play
I'm
a very important
ex officio
role.
member to the board.
Yeah. You are, in the language of the business world, you are an enabling organization, not the line organization. In other words, you're there to support the line people, and the city manager is the one that all of the people directly report up to him. They don't report through you to him. Your organization is an enabling organization, a support organization.
Yeah. When I looked it up, there's some areas where there's a whole lot of duties, and then it was pretty much, I mean, it was, right there for like support, and doing research, doing all kinds of stuff, just different things. Like I said, some did actually, took part of the debate and voted and different things, and so,
Rob, can we get your interpretation, and also how do other cities deal with,
They're all
to
different.
Jerry's point about a secretary ex officio?
Well, the clerk every municipal clerk in every municipality and every clerk of the circuit court for counties serves essentially the same role.
Yeah.
As you said, they're a support entity. They make sure the minutes are properly taken and presented back for adoption, and they make sure the meeting notices go out, but they're not meant to be a participatory member of the various advisory boards or regular boards in the cities or counties any more than city managers or county administrators are. They are stakeholders in what you all do, and so you should hear what they have to say. Clerks, municipal clerks and county clerks have a distinct existence in the history of the country. But in terms of the clerk being a member in any sense that you would think about the word member of the CSC or any of the other city advisory boards, that just isn't the case. I mean, you would even have if she were, you'd have a potential dual office holding situation, not with you, but with the boards that have actual power to wield final determination. If the clerk is ex officio to them, and that translates into being a member, now she can't be clerk. So it's I think the role she plays is the role she should be playing and the role she has historically played. And same with the manager. He comes, he represents the administration, and the five of you are the only members of the CSC.
Okay, thank you for that. So these were the three major areas, and Jerry, I'm going to let you decide. Do you want to go point by point in your document, or do you want to bring up your PowerPoint?
Well, can I ask a question
Sure.
related to that? And I asked this the last time when the city manager was here, and the response, why he doesn't sit up with us, and it was because he's not a member of the committee, which I understand. I guess my question and confusion is, why had Sean Lilly, the HR director, sat up here with us? I know this is it seems like an appropriate time to fit that in. So can I ask the group why, and maybe Rob has an opinion, but why the city manager isn't in the same capacity representing HR function as Sean did.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm aware, and I can't give you exact dates. I didn't prepare it in my notes, so, but I do have it, where the Board of Commissioners in the past as well as current have stated they specifically want a human resources director. That would be separate from the city manager, all right? But I also am aware, to be very clear, there is not enough hours for a full-time human resources director here. There is, in the past, been, I could tell you that when Sean Lilly was here, I looked at the norms, the centrality, to figure out what his typical work week was, and it was 16 and a half hours.
Sure.
Not that we're here to talk that much into that at this point, but as long as you bring it up, I personally believe the right thing to do is to do but it's something we have to talk about as a group at another time. But I believe that we actually need to do what is it called? What is the library? The library, we have an agreement with other cities. There's a specific name for that.
Interlocal agreement.
And I think we should be doing an interlocal agreement for human resources.
Well, let's stay on
That's-
topic. 'Cause
Well,
can
let's
I
answer
get-
that question. That was that question.
Yeah, and I think that could be added to the new business
Yes.
to address.
That's not today, though.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
my question was related to, we were specifically defining the roles and function of the commission, so I thought it was related. We can table it for another day, but I guess my question is, if, we're defining who's part of the commission and committee, and, previously Sean, as the HR director, had, I guess, is it ex officio, or however you want to call it, he was involved in some capacity and sat and gave input and feedback as we are working.
I guess, is your question, should the city manager sit over there instead of at the
Yes, my
podium?
opinion is based that Sean was helpful in advising and communicating with us as the attorney is, and as is Megan and the city clerk. And I mean, my question and recommendation is I would like to see the city manager involved in the same capacity if we think it's appropriate. If he's currently obtained all of the HR, I mean, he's overseeing, you have part of them, but my understanding was he is still in part responsible for the HR function.
Yeah, he'll have the final say on things. He is currently watching and hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess, and I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but would you feel better if the city manager sat?
Well, if he was
At one of the
involved, I mean,
tables
yes, I mean, I guess
instead
that's
of
a
the
question,
podium.
and this may be something you want to have in the next discussion, but I thought that that's inappropriate. We're discussing who's in what function in this organization or group or committee, however you want to call it. And so, yeah, I mean, if he wants to chime in, or if we want to bring that up at the next meeting, if it doesn't fall in line with this perfectly, I guess, in the spirit of who's technically,
I think it will fall in line personally.
Okay.
I think it will. And in anything I'm saying, I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to say human resources or the city manager should not be involved, because I am certain that the things and the decisions we make as a civil service commission directly impacts their ability to do their job and how well the city will function.
Sure.
And if they don't have input, we aren't doing the right thing.
Yes.
So I am by no means trying to say that they should not have input.
yes, and
What I'm trying to bring about is what's been brought up in the past meetings and what guidance they have provided to us and where we should go.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm bringing up.
understood. And
All
so,
right?
Gene, do you want to table this for now, my question? And I guess at some point, I would like to resolve as a group
Sure,
the
let's-
level of participation expected, and,
And we have talked that the city manager will be here so long as possible. So the main thing that I see is, if he can't be here, does that mean we should cancel the meeting? And then the second aspect is, where does he sit? In the past, he's stood at the podium. I'm trying to remember when it was the previous city manager, whether he sat, I don't know. But let's do it when he's here.
okay,
and-
very good. We can discuss
his
that.
preference.
Thank you
Personally,
for
I think
entertaining that.
the quorum is the five of us.
Exactly.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah. The meeting happens, it's the five of us.
The five of us.
All right.
Yeah.
So what I did, guys, and this is today's meeting, is I went back, this is the historical stuff, and I only pulled out things specific to what the Civil Service Commission said, detailing what they would like for us to do regarding the rules, all right? So in 2018, August 20th, the joint meeting between the Civil Service Commission and the Charter Review Committee meeting, both committees agreed the Civil Service Board needed to have more power to make decisions, especially when it comes to grievances and appeals. Arbitration steps need to be put in place that all employees should have a due process in the event the employee was terminated. It specifically stated all employees. This was Mr. Hendricks, and I believe Mr. Andrews is in there, but as a member in the crowd, not as a member on the board, okay?
So just for clarification, you reviewed the meeting minutes and/or videos and assessed this is
Yes.
what you're summarizing?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
thank
in the minutes. This is
Okay.
taken directly from the minutes.
Very good, thank you.
All right. In 2019, July 12, the Board of Commissioners, a budget review and a CSC joint meeting. The personnel policy was not updated since 2014. That's one of the things they brought up. Commissioner Andrews noticed that Article 10, disciplinary action, had been removed from the policy. The city manager removed this section from the policy without notifying the CSC. The personnel policy was returned to CSC. This is where it starts. This is why I'm saying that the city manager should be involved, absolutely needs to be involved. We can't overlook that.
Agreed.
But the city manager should not be making decisions on what's on our meeting and when we're having that meeting. And if there's any type of grievance or information that has to be reported, that city manager absolutely deserves a report from us. We need to share that with the person openly, but we need to report it to the Board of Commissioners. We need to do that, and that was asked, and we'll keep detailing it. All right. August 4th of 2020, there was a joint meeting between the Civil Service Commission and the Board of Commissioners. The entire discipline section had been removed again. The BOC sent the document back one more time. Again, this was the city manager that removed it. All right. The labor attorney offered to create a better version. That's where we come up to what we're doing right now. It was also mentioned in this meeting that they would like to have a section on whistleblowing, which we now have a different ordinance for that, which has been approved. All right. In January 31st of 2022, it had been 10 months since the last meeting. Resignation, commissioner termed out. That's this commission, all right? And there were not 3 members to hold a quorum, but the city manager delayed it, which caused it to go for 10 months. The city manager, when it comes down to it, they were saying should not make these decisions, all right? To cancel, not to not have decisions impacted on what we make for those ultimate, personnel policy that goes out, all right? So Vice Mayor Andrews, this is July 20th of 2022. Vice Mayor Andrews acknowledged, I'm sorry, I got to read this directly so I don't get it wrong. Problems have occurred in the grievance procedures and mistakes were made that had not been corrected. The Civil Service Commission conducts grievance hearings and makes a recommendation to the city manager, a charter officer. In one case, all right, the grievance was found in favor of the employee and against the city manager, and he ignored recommendations by the Civil Service Commission, and the Board of Commissioners did not act upon it. The grievance hearings are time-consuming and Civil Service and Civil Service Commission felt that they had spent their time for nothing. They need more teeth to do their job, so that does not happen. Again, a city manager should not decide their own fate. If a charter officer files a complaint against an employee and the Civil Service Commission finds in favor of the employee, the complaint and the recommendation should be given to the Board of Commissioners and not to the city manager. And I personally have to disagree with that because the charter says we have to advise the city manager. I'm reading what was written. I agree we need to tell the city manager because it's in our rules already. It has to be, all right? But I do believe that we should, sorry guys, that's the high school calling me. I do believe that we should include the Board of Commissioners in these cases when we have a grievance, not just the city manager. The procedures need to be changed to make that happen. He does not know if the change must be made by the voters or by the Board of Commissioners could do it. That would change the dynamic and the direction of it. If we do it under rules, we can do it. However, if we don't want to do it as rules, we can actually ask for a charter amendment. We can vote on that and say that this needs to go this direction. It does not have to say that we send it to the city manager. We are permitted to request a voter change to the charter to say that we give it directly to the Board of Commissioners. Me personally, I think we should still give it to the city manager. Doesn't matter who is involved. Give it to the city manager, but add into our rules that all grievances / appeals, whatever we're going to call them, still go to the Board of Commissioners. That's an addition. We're not removing, we're just adding.
Go to the commissioners and the city
Yes,
manager.
I
Okay.
think that's what should be in our rules, personally, July 20th, a regular meeting of the Civil Service Commission, this is the bylaws. Mayor Hendricks agreed with Vice Mayor Andrews and supported a change by giving the civil service more teeth. He was involved in the civil service hearing that, when that happened, and he was very disappointed how it was handled and how the employee had been handled. The Civil Service Commission is an impartial group, and if a complaint is found against the city in the grievance hearing, they need the ability to fight back when told their decision is meaningless. Mayor Hendricks read City Charter Section 5-7 Personnel Systems, Civil Service Commission subparagraph A, page 356 of the packet that was on, all right? Merit principle, all appointees and promotions of city employees shall be made solely on the basis of merit and fitness demonstrated by examination or other evidence of competence. This is something that is part of why they're coming up with the stuff they had. This is a long one. They had a lot of information on this. So this is continued, I think, for 4 slides from this one meeting. The mayor said that the department head should be the ones determining whether an examination is needed, and he does not know if they give examinations to city employees. The city manager said currently only fire employees are given, the fire employees are given examinations, written and physical. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what I was reading. All right. Mayor Hendricks read City Code Section 2-126, Intent Part C, page 5 of 56 of that packet. The Civil Service Commission members may also recommend cost of living increases and employee pay adjustments to the Board of Commissioners for consideration. Went too far, sorry guys. There we go. Next one. The mayor said that the department directors should determine the cost of living and pay adjustments for their employees, but since it is only a recommendation, he is okay with the language that was there as it was. Mayor Hendricks said if the charter officer brings a complaint against an employee and the Civil Service Commission finds in favor of the employer, then that should become before the Board of Commissioners and not to the charter officer that filed the charges. So inside of my stuff, I added that in hopefully correctly. So I listed all 4 charter officers as the at-will chart, the way we have it, at will. Anyone else is a classified or a regular employee. Based on what they're saying, all employees. To that extent, even though I haven't read the rest, to that extent, and Mr. Gomez, if you have a problem with the department head, I would not want to interfere with him doing the corrective actions, putting in writing, saying, hey, look, Joe, you're here doing job, and I don't know nobody's named Joe. I don't know if they are not. That's hypothetical, all right? Joe, you need to do a job, and he puts down clearly this is the job that has to happen, and that person doesn't conform to that, then he deserves to be able to have the right to release that person. I would be completely for that. But if he does it unfairly, which Mr. Gomez will not do, all right? If he does it unfairly, that person deserves to have the right to become before the Civil Service Commission because there's only 4 employees that are hired by the Board of Commissioners. Everyone else is hired literally by the city manager and someone else based upon the rules because there has to be 2 people involved, all right? So therefore, it should go before the Board of Commissioners, or not board, us, Civil Service Commissioners, I'm sorry. But it's honestly, I think it's where we're trying to say the same thing, but how do we resolve it? And I'm looking at historical stuff that was said and trying to figure out how do we make that happen based upon the things that have already been brought up? So that's why I'm saying all employees.
So I think you and the attorney's language is
We're at
different.
odds
You're
just
at
on
odds.
department head.
So I would
At
say we
odds
need
on
to
department head.
resolve that, and I'd say
Yeah.
continue,
Yeah.
if you have more to present on, I think that needs to be resolved, and what I've heard is there's a difference of opinion there, and I
Yes,
Yeah.
would like it.
And so-
agreed.
So should
So-
we discuss that first?
Let's do that, talk about
Okay.
who should this apply to? That was my number 2. The difference is, as you said, Christine, a difference of opinion only in department heads. So, and the literature goes back and forth, you know, you've cited things, I've cited different things. I'd like to hear where we are today, Rob, from an attorney perspective, what would be your recommendation? Should department heads go to the Board of Commissioners, or should it be changed now that, that they would come to us? And what would be your rationale?
Well, philosophically, my advice to all of my clients is that a line be drawn between management and protected, civil service protected employees. My policy defines that as at will. And so if you look at my policy draft, the first provision that I have is that for purposes of this policy, the term at will or serving at will shall mean that employees holding positions designated by the Board of Commissioners as such serve at the will and pleasure of the city manager, and includes but not limited to all deputy or assistant city managers, directors, deputy or assistant directors, division managers, division chiefs, section managers, or trusted aides or assistants, regardless of specific position title, which positions exist or may in the future be created. All employees directly reporting to the city manager shall be deemed as director for purposes of this policy, notwithstanding their actual title. A trusted aide is any employee working as an administrative assistant to the city manager or to one or more members of the Board of Commissioners. Absent city charter or contract terms to the contrary, the city manager and city clerk serve at the will and pleasure of the Board of Commissioners, subject only to the terms of any employment contract to the contrary. So that's the line that I draw. The city commission can decide if it wants to give civil service protection to department directors. If it does, and I tried to explain this in our last meeting, it sets up a tension between the manager and his or her senior management team. And as I explained at the last meeting, in government, and this is very common, it exists in Pinellas County, it exists in many government agencies, if the manager cannot have the ability to require his or her directors to perform in the manner that he wants without the threat of having his every managerial move drugged before an advisory board, it breaks down that manager's authority. When you have someone who rises to the role of department head, he or she knows coming in that I'm accepting a role that I'm now sticking my neck out, so to speak, that I need to be on the same page as the city manager. And that's a free choice that they make. Again, it's a total business choice that the Board of Commissioners can make whether to give directors civil service protection or not. If they want to give directors civil service protection, such that the only people who serve at will are the manager and the clerk, and I think the finance director is the only other employee. I don't think he's an employee either, so it's really the manager and the clerk. Then they can make that decision, and we'll revise the policy. But in terms of my recommendation, I recommend that not be the case. And that's why, because the manager is held to account by the governing board for how the organization is being run day to day. And if the manager is hamstrung by having directors who say, I'm not going to follow your lead, I'm not going to do something that's going to get me disciplined necessarily, but I'm going to resist you in every little way that I can. I'm going to frustrate how you want to have things done because I don't feel like doing it. And I dare you to discipline me because I'm just going to go to the Civil Service Board and or the Board of Commissioners. That's the dynamic. And so I understand and respect Commissioner Cantrell's view to the contrary. And so my recommendation is what it is, and that's the justification for it. So it's up to you guys to decide what you want to recommend to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
Can I have it?
Other, yeah,
You're-
let's open other questions, and then I would,
Well, I would ask Commissioner Cantrell, hearing that, does that change your opinion?
No, I can add
Still
more
no.
to it, though.
Okay, I'd like to hear, if you don't mind, from Paul. You haven't
Yeah.
said much. I want to hear
Yeah.
Paul's opinion.
Okay, I'm going to try to come up with it, but I'd like to ask Rob a question. Is the city manager able to terminate an employee without cause?
So the city manager, under the draft rules that are before you, that we haven't gone through that yet, but that section yet, but under the draft rules, the city manager can terminate any of his direct reports or any of the confidential employees, which is basically his executive assistant. Under my construct, as I've written it, the manager does not directly discipline or terminate people below the rank of his direct reports. I am recommending a system where it's a tiered, each director oversees his or her department, and each director makes the termination or suspension decisions subject to, well, if it's a suspension, subject to review by the manager, and if it's a termination, subject to review by you all. And why I am recommending that construct is because for two reasons. One, the manager can't possibly be monitoring the job performance in any meaningful way of all of the city's employees. And so that role is better left to the department head for each of those departments. Secondarily, each department, and we talked about this, I think, last time, each department has its own culture, if you will, and each department head can have his or her own disciplinary philosophy. Some department heads will be very easy peasy. I used to work with a department head at Manatee County he was kind of a Woodstock guy, and I always used to joke, one of his employees could, shoot somebody to death, and he'd be like, well, let's consider why, and that was him, that was Fred. Whereas the public works director had a crew of people, mostly men, who needed a firmer hand, at least so he felt. And so he was a lot more quick to say, look, if you're not going to toe the line, you're not going to be able to be in my department anymore. And so legally speaking, that's all fine, the courts will say, as long as that department head is consistent and non-discriminatory in how he or she treats the people in their department. But across departments, you can have differences of opinion, and that's fine. All of that, of course, below the level of termination would be reviewed, at least under my draft policy, to the manager. And the manager would pose questions to the director and say, why did you give this person 5 days off? Have anybody else in your department done this same or similar thing? Why didn't they get 5 days off? To sort of be a check upon making sure that the rules are created or applied equally in that department. At the level of department head, that is where the only people that the manager can terminate. And even there, terminate is about all he would do, because those people are FLSA exempt. And so you wouldn't be giving them 3-day suspension or whatever, because that's inconsistent with their FLSA status. And so instead, as I kind of talked about last time, a manager works with his or her directors as professional to professional. And so he would call them in and sit them down and say, listen, sanitation director, listen, fire chief, whatever the director is, I'm feeling that you're not on board with how I would like things run here at the city. I've got a mission. I've got a vision of management. I've shared that with our Board of Commissioners. Our Board of Commissioners has hired me as the manager. I am accountable to them to get things done the way I'm telling them I'm going to get it done. you need to be on board with that and not be rowing the boat against me. So can you do that, director? And that's a relationship that the manager and the director have to have with each other. And again, that's what gets back to why I don't recommend that department heads have civil service rights, because if they do, they can more easily resist the direction of the city manager. Did that answer your question?
Yes and no. Could you give me a yes or no? Is a city manager able to terminate an at-will
Yes.
employee
Yes,
without cause?
that's what at will means.
Yes, I know that. Okay, so therefore,
And then, so their appeal process
They have
to
none.
go to the Board of Commissioners.
Well, no, they have no appeal process.
no,
Okay.
they're done.
Have no appeal
So-
process.
So I sat on this commission some years ago, and we had 2 employees that were terminated by the manager. We on both of those employees, we had hearings, we had attorneys, we had testimony, sworn testimony, and the manager proceeded with termination without hearing any of our decision. I don't think he ever asked for it or abided by anything we said. I think it was sometime following that this code of ordinances changed the CSC to act as an advisory, non-binding commission. So I'm more in favor of going back to the old days when we had some teeth and some clout to make a difference for our employees.
Well, the charter itself indicates that you're advisor. So without a charter amendment, you cannot become the type of civil service commission that has the power to overrule the manager. That would require a charter amendment.
We wouldn't overrule the manager. We would come up with a decision that was fair and distinct and then take that before the Board of Commissioners.
But the
That's
Board of
our
Commissioners-
job. We are supposed to supply that information to the city manager, and we've been requested to supply it to the Board of Commissioners. If they have to make a ruling based upon our decisions, they're ultimately the ones to choose. But we have to do the research and background to get it done. That's any way it goes. We still have to do the research and background.
And
I can tell you that 2 different jobs I've had. One was at Medical Education Technologies down in Sarasota, Florida. And I was on the board of directors there. And if my boss wanted to let me go, I guess he could have. But just like any other employee, I had the right to be treated fairly. If I'm not doing my job, tell me it. And then hold me to it. Put it in writing. This is what I expect. If it's somebody that's at that level of a director, you don't need to give them more than 24 hours. There should be significant expectations from that position. If they can't uphold it and they cause disruption in the rest of the workforce, eliminate the person. Not, kill them, but fire them. Seriously. Remove that person from the position. But they deserve that opportunity to go through the process that everyone else goes through. Then I can give you another one where when I was with Siemens Medical Solutions, I was a senior manager of field engineering. There was one guy above me in the United States. I had to make all sorts of decisions. And I worked, a lot of my employees worked in at-will states, but it didn't matter there was an at-will state. I still had to go through the process of documentation if that employee needed to be terminated. So it doesn't make any sense to me because, say Mr. Gomez in this capacity ends up taking another job because he's a skilled guy and he goes on, he's going to make about $250,000 a year somewhere else. Who wouldn't, right? All right, so a new city manager comes in.
Give me that job.
Yeah, give me the job. But a new city manager comes in. So what we're saying now is new city manager comes in and he's already doesn't like somebody, or she, doesn't like somebody. You're gone. That's what could happen. And that is not a fair practice. And we need to make sure that does not happen. Because even though if you put it in this rules or whatever, not rules, but in the employee manual, that you're an at-will employee, but that you let them go because somebody doesn't like it, I'm fairly confident they could probably come back and sue.
That's true.
So it would make sense for us to be able to at least have that authority of a first right of looking at it, and right may not be the right word, but we look at it, we make the determination of what's fair and why not fair, we provide our recommendation to the city manager and to the Board of Commissioners. That's what we have to decide. Do we leave the charter where it is, or in our rules, do we write that, yes, we provide it to the manager because that's what the charter says, but our rules say, yes, we go a little step further and we provide it to the Board of Commissioners as well. I don't think it's a wise choice to put anyone that is not hired by the Board of Commissioners in that position. The Board of Commissioners has to review a grievance. That's our job, Civil Service Commission. It says we review grievance, all right? If it's Clara, or it's the attorney, or it's the finance director, or it's the city manager, we should have nothing to say about that. The Board of Commissioners hired them. It's their choice to make those decisions. But anyone else, it says we review grievances, all right? We should hear it. We should hear it and provide a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
That seems reasonable and valid. Paul, what, it looks like you're going to say something.
No, go ahead. I do have something to
You
say.
speak, I
Well,
speak enough.
Yeah, yeah, Jerry, I'm with you, but I'd like to know how we can regain, as Mayor Hendricks and Vice Mayor Andrews suggest, how do we get more authority?
I think that's where if we want to make a recommendation for, and correct me on this, Chair, because I don't know correctly. If we want to make a recommendation, first, I think we need to agree on it, all right? We need to listen to what the chair has to say. And I honestly believe we should make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners that there's a vote by the citizens. If the Board of Commissioners is asking us to get more teeth, the way to do it, to make it permanent, is to make sure that we're doing a vote by the citizens. If we're doing it on paper, we're going to report to the Board of Commissioners, and it's okay. You know, it depends upon what we want as a group. But we do have the authority to request an amendment to the charter.
So I would suggest we leave that.
And I
till
think,
the-
I think, Madam Chair, Commissioner Cantrell is going in the right direction in terms of if you all want to recommend, if you all believe that the Civil Service Commission should have actual authority over overruling or modifying discipline decisions made by the manager, that needs to be a charter amendment. Because right now, let's just walk through, if you say, we want to allow employees to come forward and come before us and make a case about that their discipline was wrong, and then that's going to go to the Board of Commissioners. What exactly is it do you envision would happen at the Board of Commissioners? Because the charter expressly gives to the city manager, who is hired by the commission, the power to hire and fire. So the commission can certainly express its displeasure at the manager for firing someone that they feel should not have been fired. But under the charter, that's the city manager's authority to do. And the ramification, if he does it in a way that the majority of the commission doesn't like, is the commission can terminate his contract. So I just want you all to think through that, you're talking about going to the commission to give them a report on this or that. It's really going to go nowhere except to create a standoff between the manager and the commission, potentially. And so it would be better if you want to have the type of civil service commission system where, and I went through this in St. Petersburg when I was a young attorney, their civil service board had the power to overrule a termination. You went there, you talked to those, I think 5 people, maybe 7, and you made your case, and if they voted in your favor, you got your job back. And there was no, that the mayor couldn't get involved and the director couldn't get involved. But that's not, at least right now, how Madeira Beach's charter reads.
But I almost think regardless, the value of having the Civil Service Commission have a hearing is to present the other side of the case, right? You have to sit to the Board of Commissioners, even though we're advisory. I mean, to me, it still sounds like we have, I think we can get more teeth and time, but we still are in essence representing the employee, right? Against the city manager
We're
and
avoiding-
providing,
I think we're representing the city, not the employee. We're representing the city. We're not representing the city manager. We're not representing the employee. We're representing the city
True.
and making a determination of what is fair.
so I think that even as written, our unbiased opinion on a department head appeal or any of it is of value, even being in an advisory position. And I think that we can move forward and however, get an amendment to the charter, but we still have value as is in the appeal process and having that review.
I think then, do we need to make a decision? Do we request an amendment? Or do we say, if those department heads are definitely going to be able to go through the grievance process, the appeals process, they come to us, we don't just stop at giving that report back to the city manager, we also provide it directly to the Board of Commissioners. How do you want to do it? I
The
mean,
Board of
either
Com-
way.
But even if the Board of Commissioners decide that the employee should be reinstated, the manager can still go ahead and terminate.
So
Correct?
I think we're all on the same page that we want to address that, right? Is there, I mean,
Well,
Jean, what's
I
your
know,
opinion?
we want to address it. I don't know we're all on the same page so far as, and just again, to simplify it, we're talking about what happens to department heads or directors only, right?
Yes.
That's
No,
it.
no, we're not.
every
Yeah,
employee needs to be
everybody else,
treated fairly.
it's clearly defined.
No, but Paul is stating to amend the charter to have a final say, right? We can overturn a termination of a regular employee. We're not
Restore their
only,
pay.
that's-
Yep, Tampa does that.
That's,
Tampa can do that.
And
Their
that-
Civil Service Commission.
guys, that's a whole nother issue outside of this ordinance.
Then we have to make a
So-
decision of what we want to do there because that impacts this ordinance. That's what we're trying to get at. What do we want to do? Do we want to say, do we want to ask, and I don't know, we go to the Civil Service Commission or we just make a motion to say we'd like to make a charter amendment? I don't know the direction of that. Do we sit here and say that?
So there's, if I could, commissioners, there's two distinct issues.
yes.
Yes.
The first issue can be dealt with by the commission through a combination of the ordinance and the personnel policy, which is if you want to recommend that every employee, no matter how high ranking, except those few charter officers, if they get terminated, they get to appeal to you for an advisory opinion, and then your advisory opinion gets given to the manager and the Board of Commissioners, that can be written in. The only issue there that I ask is that you will be raising an expectation on the part of those employees that somehow, if you agree with their position, that the manager is going to be forced to change his mind. And that's not the case. That gets to the second distinct legal issue, which is, do you want to actually have authority to overrule the manager's discipline decision? That would require a charter amendment.
Correct.
I,
So,
to me, I think we should be able to, if they brought a grievance before us, we should be able to report that to the Board of Commissioners, because the Board of Commissioners is the one that employs the manager.
An appeal,
It
right?
would be, yes,
Okay,
yeah, appeal,
sorry.
yes. I'm using those
I'm
words
getting-
interchangeably, all right? That's-
Yes.
But the Board of Commissioners who hires the manager. If the manager's firing somebody for an unjust reason, they need to know it anyway. It doesn't matter if we overturn it, they still need to know it because
There's a
there is
bigger
a
issue.
problem.
Yeah.
There's a bigger issue.
I'd have to agree with Jerry on this. I mean, I hearing both sides, I agree with Rob in the sense that, yes, managerially, it is appropriate for the manager to be able to make decisions and hire and fire. Ideally, those are sound and without bias or any other reason that could come back for litigation. We know this is not Manager Gomez, but it can be where the city manager is wrong. And in those instances, the person that is a department head, it seems reasonable to go through the process. I don't see a reason why that would be a problem with the regular expectation, as you said. I mean, the same relationship, I would think, would still exist. It would only be a problem if there was something out of line, right? It would only be, I mean, you're a director and a manager, you have the same expectation you did with or without the proper appeal process. You're only going to use that in a very extreme case, right? I mean, it should be negligible almost. Is that fair? I mean, it seemed, Gene and Paul, what are you thinking?
Oh, go ahead, Jerry. Or I could go along with that as far as reporting to the city manager and the city commission. And I think that's the way probably it should go. What if there's a complaint against the manager? Where does that go?
Well, wait, I feel like we're muddying the waters
Okay.
and moving on to a lot of different things. So the question is, should department heads, and Rob, this question to you, if a department head is terminated, currently they don't have an appeal process, could they hire an attorney to defend them, to seek their job back?
They can hire an attorney to file a lawsuit that they were terminated for an unlawful reason. They're
Yes.
still protected by all the the civil rights laws. So Title VII, race discrimination, disability discrimination, gender. They're covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. They can say they were terminated for First Amendment retaliation. There's a whole panoply of state and federal civil rights laws that exempt employees, at-will employees can invoke. The key difference is that they do not have a property interest in their job. The Supreme Court of the United States many decades ago, sort of made the distinction between the at-will group and the civil service group, and ruled that if you're in the civil service group, due process has to be required, whether it's a civil service commission or a hearing officer, or different governments do it different ways, but there's got to be some ability to challenge, and the standard is, was there just cause to terminate that employee? That's the line that's drawn between your civil service protected group and your at-will group. And so if what you all want to do is say even the at-will group can still come and make a case that they shouldn't have been terminated, and if we agree, we can develop a report that says we agree you shouldn't have been terminated, and then that gets sent to the manager and the commission. You can do that, absolutely. The issue that director is just going to need to understand is, unless the charter is changed, it doesn't change the fact that they're still terminated.
But the Board of Commissioners is aware that the manager has fired somebody, and they'll know whether we as a Civil Service Commission, because we are the experts on the policy, supposedly, we either agree or we disagree, and then the Civil Service Commission could ask us, if they wished, why?
You mean
Why?
the Board of Commissioners?
I'm
could
sorry,
ask
yes,
that.
I'm sorry, correct, thank you,
Okay.
Board of Commissioners. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Pretty unlikely that we would get a referendum put forward on this. So I would be inclined to go along with what Jerry's suggesting there.
Ms. Van Blargen, what were you going to say?
If you were to want to consider a charter amendment, I'm the election official for the city of Madeira Beach, or supervisor of elections. I can do, if you directed me, I can do a report to the board, and we can also have a workshop with the Board of Commissioners, and you can, and they will direct the city attorney at that time to draft a charter amendment.
I'm
It can be done.
inclined, let's get through this ordinance,
Okay.
and then
And talk
down-
about that.
I agree,
road.
but I think that's great. I think we should set up a workshop, and I agree, getting through the ordinance. It sounds like, I mean, I did actually want to ask the city manager, but I can ask Claire, the city clerk, do you, in your experience hearing this, have any qualms about if this were to be extended, that to cause any difference in managerial style. I mean, to me, as a manager in my own profession, knowing that that's written into the policy, I don't think would cause an actual managerial rift. Like, I mean, I get it, but I'm curious from the city manager and yourself, what your opinion is.
I don't think it would cause a problem if it's done fairly, you know. Because, you know, any side of the party could be abusive to it.
Sure.
You know, in your policies, you can expect the city manager to do what he's supposed to, as well as the employees. And then if you should hear something, of course, you're hearing both sides. You're doing due diligence in listening to both sides. And so however the policy's written, which you want to, if the department heads were to come before you, you're going to hear both sides regardless. They may file a complaint and want to appeal whatever, or they even feel that maybe something they might want to talk about something before something actually happened like that. And, you know, you're like a mediator. You're listening to both sides and settling it that way, and then giving a recommendation to the city manager.
So I think we've had a robust discussion, and unless somebody wants to bring a new perspective on this issue of should the language in the ordinance be changed to include all employees, or should it remain that the at-will are not included? Can I have a motion? that we-
Let's clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
At will, to me, in my head,
Yes.
is those 4 that are hired by the Board of Commissioners. But you don't want to use that word?
I think at will means all the employees.
Okay.
So let me ask the attorney, you quoted something earlier, the initial input from you quoted a definition for at-will. I was flipping through the ordinance, I don't think it comes right. Was what you quoted as the definition in that personnel policy that you had in your language from that?
Yes, it's section 1A10.
Okay. So he defined it in his updated draft, which isn't currently adopted. So I would defer to what the attorney has defined as at-will. My recommendation is to use that definition.
Yes,
But at will-
agreed.
At will means what then to us?
Well, so that's a good question. Rob, whom in the city is at will by your definition? Everybody or just the department heads?
Well, it's what I read. I'll read it again.
Sure, yep, we don't have it in front of us, so,
Sure, no problem. The term at will shall mean employees holding positions designated by the Board of Commissioners. As such, serve at the will and pleasure of the city manager, and includes but is not limited to all deputy or assistant city managers, directors, deputy or assistant directors, division managers or division chiefs, section managers or trusted aides or assistants, regardless of specific position title, which positions exist or may in the future be created. All employees directly reporting to the city manager shall be deemed as director for purposes of this policy, notwithstanding their actual title. A trusted aide is any employee working as an administrative assistant to the city manager or to one or more members of the Board of Commissioners.
so with that, so he's saying the directors and above, all the employees are not at will.
Correct.
Paul, you look like you have a
Yeah,
statement.
I'm confused, Rob. In the state of Florida, I assumed all employees, regular employees, were at will of the city manager, or of the manager, or of the
So I guess that's a
business
question.
owner, or whomever.
Are all of the employees of the city at will, Rob?
That means they could be released without.
Yeah, without
No.
cause.
The current rules have everybody having a civil service right, except for those people in the charter.
Can't you have a civil service right and be at will, or no, you cannot have a civil service right and be at will?
Well, again, what we're describing now that can be done without a charter amendment is a weird hybrid kind of, because they're still at will. The manager can terminate them, but you're wanting to give them the right to come before you and still argue that they shouldn't have been terminated for some reason.
That's
And again,
correct.
we're not talking about statutory reasons because they can go to court on that. But just that the manager was unfair, didn't hear my side of the story, whatever it may be. And then you all, under what you've been discussing, would make a recommendation and give that to the manager and the commission. But that person still would be fired.
I think the question, though, there is actually not about the directors, right, Paul? It's about the regular employee can be fired
Yeah.
because they, we don't have work for you, whatever the reason, right? So he's asking not about the directors, right, Paul?
No,
So we
right.
want to know about the
The
regular
regular
employee
employees.
below the department manager. Are they at will technically?
Yes, because
That's the-
you all have no power to reinstate.
Right, okay.
So technically,
the only
every
difference-
employee is at will.
Every employee is
Correct.
at will.
I think what we're trying to do, though, is make sure that we have the ability for all of those employees, if they feel that they're unfairly terminated, to bring an appeal before us. We listen to both sides of the information, and we make a determination, was this fair, was it not? We provide that information back to the city manager, and we provide it to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners makes the decision, are they terminated, are they reinstated?
And the only opinion left that I did want to get, and it's unfortunate I didn't get to him before he walked out, but I did want Robin's opinion on that. I'm ready to make my decision. I just don't feel, we have not heard from the one person that would also, we've heard our opinions, we've heard the attorneys. Is he,
So basically, you're
go.
wanting to keep it in-house. Like, it's almost like the grievance, the other ordinance that you had, because they're trying to keep that in-house.
Sure.
So to keep them going straight to the courts.
Okay.
So I guess this is the same way, you're wanting to do it in-house before somebody went and hired an attorney and sue the city.
and that's the only other, so I did want to hear from Robin on this, if that's okay.
Robin, do you know where we're at with what we're discussing?
Sorry to,
Yes.
thank you for coming back in. So
So,
I just wanted your opinion on all of this.
well, I think I agree with Rob about keeping the charter. I mean, you have to keep the authority of the manager, otherwise then you really need to switch the form of government. So the council manager form of government does provide the duties and responsibilities of the manager as are listed, and those do need to maintain, otherwise we can switch to a strong mayor form of government or other form. So that's still keep that authority to do that. I think I agree with what Rob's kind of direction to you is just to continue in that path.
Do you see any issue with your current management strategy if we were to allow for, think not of you, think of a different city manager who's not as good as you and in the nature of protecting Madeira in the long term, honestly. So, it could, and just thinking logistically managerial, there seems to be an argument to allow the directors to have an appeal process should whatever
No,
happen.
I think that what should happen is that all the directors, all the charter officers, and there's one that does not, should have an employment agreement. At-will employees, so the department head should similarly have an employment agreement that stipulates how that works. I think that's a different conversation, but that's what most other cities do. There's an employment agreement that identifies what their role is, what their rights are. Anything specific, it includes benefits, et cetera. Madeira Beach is the first city I've worked in where that's not the case, but I'm sure there are cities that don't do that, but there are cities that do that. That's how you protect and ensure that work is performed to the expectations of your highest paid employees in the organization, other than obviously your executives.
So if I'm not wrong, your recommendation would be the same thing that we're in a
Pretty much.
quandary over. You either got to do a charter amendment, or we have to rewrite a personnel policy to accommodate that.
I don't think you have to rewrite it, you would just add that component.
It would be,
Robin, are you in favor of, if one of your direct reports, you want to you feel the need to terminate them, do you believe that your direct report should have the right to
No.
come to the civil service,
Not an appeal process, no. that
not
is-
in an appeal process.
Again, that should be handled, you handle that through an employment agreement, but not have an appeal process. An employment agreement can have much more details that I
Right.
think what you've been discussing as to what's the process if they're not doing. And yes, it goes back to properly managing, but once you get to that level, you either do the job that you're hired to do or you do not. What are you appealing? That the person didn't like me, that I wore blue when they said wear red? I mean, it's properly managing your employees, providing clear expectations. No board of commission should hire a city manager that does not already obviously know that that's extremely, extremely important.
What if they do and they have in our past
You
history?
get a new board of commissioners then, or a new city
That's tough.
council. That's that's the issue.
Right.
How to do that is you're not always going to have, but that should be, HR personnel matters are extremely important in any organization when hiring any
Yes, sir.
CEO, CAO, whether county, city manager, et cetera.
But what Robin is asking is that we change the entire process. That's what's being happening. You either have to do one of two things. You either have to, and I'm using this, I hope, the right way. We have to write additional procedures that would actually accommodate that, which would be a contract. You already have other employees that have that, but that's done through the Board of Commissioners.
You're hired as a service contract. I mean, you are hired to do a job. If you
Yes.
don't do the job, you can.
You get terminated. But in order to terminate somebody, you need to make sure that you document what didn't happen. And I think the city manager needs a significant degree of latitude when it comes to a director, personally. I mean, if you're trying to tell somebody you got to do something and they don't follow that, I mean, I'm serious, even within 24 hours, if they go out and they create disruptions within the city manager deserves to have the right to terminate that person. That still doesn't take away from that director being able to have the right to say, I'd like to have an appeal, something else happened. That person should be able to say that. Go back to this. It was arbitration steps need to be put in place for all employees back to August 20th of 2018, and that had to do with things that you heard in the past. One of the two. By the way, one of those was taken offline, and I couldn't see it. It was just recently put back on. One of the grievances. It wasn't there.
But with all due respect,
Yeah.
you're citing people from 2018 that are no longer on they're not part of the current Board of Commissioners. So their philosophy, I'm sorry, it doesn't count.
I don't think
Not
it's part
only
of
are
the
they not on it,
philosophy.
they were voted out.
Yeah, it's not
It's-
about the
it's not
philosophy,
relevant.
it's about, so I think, respectfully, the idea here is something happened multiple times in our past history. So it's not about Robin, it's about I don't even know who that was before, but there was an ability for what happened to happen multiple times
To sidestep it.
in
Yeah.
2018, so we're trying to prevent that.
Well,
And
the two instances, as I recall, were part of it was not a department manager.
that's true. So I will.
It went through the regular process, those two people. They did come to civil service. That happened. The problem that we're trying to solve has never happened before. The issue
Probably
is,
won't happen. I think that is
where
valid.
We still
what
need to address
happens
it
to a
make sure it doesn't.
department head if the city manager decides to fire them? We've heard from the attorney who thinks that it should stay status quo, should not be involved in the Civil Service Commission. We've heard from our city manager stating the same thing, that he's going to be a good leader, and if they, at that high level of the organization, he should have the trust to take care of that. Anybody
Well,
below that, it's spelled out, they're civil service employees, they can appeal, we're involved.
But if you look
And
past
just-
the last 6 years' documents, it repetitively came up that was sidestepped, and they're asking us to address it and make sure it doesn't happen again. Do we make sure it doesn't happen for a few employees, or do we make sure it doesn't happen for all employees? It's been routinely addressed as all employees. So I mean,
But just understand that you really wouldn't be changing what happened then would still happen unless the voters give you authority to overrule a manager's employment decision.
But
Those people that had disputes, as the chair pointed out, did get to come before the Civil Service Commission. The problem was, as I understand it, I wasn't around then, the manager simply utterly ignored the process and just chose not to listen to what the Civil Service Commission had to say and forged ahead and did what he did. But that would still occur under what you're talking about doing now, because the charter gives termination authority to the manager, and the commission, the Board of Commissioners, do not, under the charter, have the authority to overrule. And obviously you don't either. And so what the voters of the city would need to do is say, we want our employees, if they truly are civil service protected, wherever you draw that line, either the Civil Service Commission or the Board of Commissioners needs to be given the authority.
You cut out.
To that's really what this boils down to, because otherwise I think that you're going to raise expectations that employees feel, yay, we're now protected more than ever before, and really they're not.
That's true.
Then, Mr. Mayor, can I ask you a question? Should this go before the Board of Commissioners and we say which direction you want it to go?
I think, I don't know, Rob, what you think, but please chime in, because this will go back in front of the board at some point, just.
But why, if we're trying to address right now, how do we take care of it? It's either got to be us, the Civil Service Commission, or it's got to be the Board of Commissioners that has the ability, when something has been wronged, to overturn it.
No, there's a third option, that we're not involved.
But yet, we're supposed to be involved based upon what the Article 5.7 says, that we're supposed to hear grievances, which are now appeals. So if it's an appeal, then we're supposed to be involved. It's not that we're not involved. We are supposed to be involved by the charter. They are employees, all employees. There's only 4 employees that are employed by the Board of Commissioners directly. Everyone else is under the guidance of the manager. That's what we have to decide. If that's the case, based on what the attorney is telling us, do we want to have the authority to overturn a decision made ultimately by the manager, or do we want to ask the Board of Commissioners to have that authority? It's one or the other. See, the mayor's going to.
I mean, the charter but that's what the charter gives, I guess you're kind of going around in a roundabout way of, well, then you're going to take authority and power away from the manager.
No.
That's my
No,
only
that-
concern.
I
That's
think
not it.
the idea
No,
is
it's not
in
it
the
at all.
extreme
No.
case that, so we don't want to do anything. There have been
That's-
extreme cases
We want you
in
to be able
the-
to do what you
Yeah,
want.
do
I'm
whatever
sorry.
you want, and then
Yeah.
somebody does something incorrectly is the only time we should be involved.
If a manager
I mean, because this has happened
takes
historically.
incorrect actions, then
Well,
we
it
should
didn't
be
happen to a
involved.
department head, though.
That is true. So I guess those are two separate. I think we need to keep them
You're just
separate.
talking about department head level, at-will employees, correct?
We're trying to figure out, do we address this as all employees, or do we exclude department heads? And as I've stated before, I've been in companies where I was a director. There was only one person above me. And in those cases, if they wanted to eliminate any director, they still had to go through the same process. They still had to document what was going on. You can't just, boom, fire.
And the reality is, a good manager, we would be on,
Documents.
we'd be on, but, so
Right.
we're not worried about you, and
No,
we
no,
would,
I
we would
understand
be
that.
on the same page, right? So if you are correct, and, I mean, we obviously like to think things through and are, it's not that we wouldn't support a correct decision, it's that we would try and prevent anything that would come back as an
Be
issue
able
and
to
a
sue the city.
liability. That's really what we're after, right? That's our intent,
Yeah.
is to prevent liability.
So what Attorney Ashenfelder is saying, though, is that even if we hear the appeal and we agree in the case of the employee that it was an unfair treatment, and we send it to the Board of Commissioners, there's still no process to rehire the employee.
We can't change that right now, is the reality. We have to put that to a workshop. So I'd like us to focus on, so I guess if, it sounds like I mean, I know Paul, I mean, personally, I think there is value in our history in having, I mean, I guess, can the four of us state where we stand? To me, yes, I think we need more teeth. And I think that that is something that we should have a workshop on and go after. That's a separate conversation, but my opinion on what I know right now is that's the direction we need to head. Sounds like you are also there.
Agree with that.
Do you, Jean?
No,
You don't agree?
I believe that we are an advisory commission. We need to hire competent people. We being the board, the Board of Commissioners has to hire competent people. We are there to advise. We need to trust the people. No, I do not think we need more teeth. And in fact, I asked this question, Jerry, right before you were here, just philosophically, guys. I said, where do you think we need more teeth, less teeth, or about the same? And everybody answered about the same. So what has changed now that I'm hearing that you want to have more teeth?
I think it's because you're now aware of the historical information that you guys asked me to research, and I presented that. It's all there. It's in the documents. I
I'd be
mean, I read 6
surprised
years
if
worth
Paul
of
said-
documents.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Paul said less teeth. Paul's
No,
always been
Paul's going to
about,
say more teeth, for
Paul's
sure.
always been saying more teeth. So I guess, Paul, it sounds like we're 2 and 1, and what's your opinion currently?
No, I think we need more teeth
Okay,
also.
so
And
I'd like-
I would like to find some way to go about it without a charter amendment.
Same here.
I wonder
You
how.
can't. It's
When-
sort of what it's.
When that rule came in to effect, it's listed here as an ordinance. I don't know that it wasn't. I don't know if it was, do you recall, Claire?
What was the question?
Was there any change to our
Charter.
charter?
Between the case that Paul's talking about where we were, the civil service, not we, I was not part of it, was unable to get the process that had been set up. I think he's asking, have there been changes in the charter?
No, it's always just been asked for either by board members of the Board of Commissioners, and we just never put anything on the agenda to make that happen.
Have we been advisory for the last, like, say, 10 years, 20 years, as far as you know? Has the role of the Civil Service Commission changed in the?
That's been there for a long time, and then even though you're advisory, you're going by what court cases may have happened or something. It's
Yes,
how you
ma'am.
reach your recommendation to the city manager based on court cases and different things, just like an attorney general, is basically.
In
our
the charter, it gives you dates at the end of that section, and it looks like it's been there since 1984.
Okay, so that answers,
It
thank you.
appears that ordinance 2018-09, and I haven't read through it, it appears that there were no changes to the Civil Service Commission
For a
with
long
that
time.
ordinance.
That answers it. So no, Paul, this
Was it
is as
changed?
it was.
Was it changed on an ordinance, or was it changed by referendum?
No, the charter can only be changed by referendum, but after a referendum occurs, or, I'm sorry, before the referendum occurs, there is an ordinance to,
Correct.
and I think Clara can explain the process. So at some point, there are ordinances to change the charter with the referendum. So only registered voters can change our charter. And so the ordinance would be codified in the charter saying, here's when a change, go to this document to show what the change was and when it occurred.
Correct, and then
But
we
he's-
send the revised one to the state.
So there's nothing indicating in our charter. So the charter is as it was in those instances.
Correct, and then, so we could have a workshop with the commission, and, listening to you all, they can come up with something, and we have an ordinance take place that the city attorney writes, and have it on the ballot.
Okay, I make a motion to hold a workshop to do that.
I'll second that.
I think that the better ask is a joint meeting.
Yeah,
with
joint
the
meeting,
Board of
that's what we're
Commissioners.
meaning, it's a joint meeting, it's advertised
Correct.
accordingly. We've had lots of meetings with civil service.
Okay,
Several.
I make a motion to, go ahead and, to host a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners to understand the option to make a referendum to the charter.
So I'll second that.
Okay?
We need to vote?
We vote?
Commissioner Ponte,
Agreed.
Commissioner Tilka,
Agreed?
Commissioner Cantrell,
Agreed?
Chair Ambler.
Agreed?
The motion carried 4-0, and so I'll put it on the agenda and have the commission to set a date.
Thank you very much.
So even with that done, we still have to make a decision are the directors included in the appeal process?
It
At
seems
this
like we're
point.
pretty split, and I'm having a hard time deciding. Jean, I mean, just, I don't know I'm having a hard time deciding on
Now,
that
if you
one.
was holding off on, of course, you have procedures in place now, and if you wanted to wait to the joint workshop with the commission and hash it all out and everything, and maybe we can have something that's just for that meeting, because I can see it going for a while, instead of having 10 other items behind it. And then that way, and take it from there. I mean, you do have something on the books now.
We have what's currently there.
Yes,
the
you do.
rules.
Yes.
What the current rules are. So should we, Chair Ambler, you wanted to keep this to an hour, and we're
Yeah.
already at an hour now. So what is it you would advise we do at this point?
So of the three issues, we resolved the one, but we've not tackled the roles of like city manager and city clerk.
Okay.
Is that something that, and then we've not, this one is, I feel like we've gone back and around and around and
And that's
differences
also
of
something you
opinions.
can add a rule to, and if you do a charter amendment, who does that responsibility to make it clear?
So would it be possible for us to knock out number 3?
Yes. I
in-
think
Manager
that's a
versus
good
city
idea.
clerk?
In 20 minutes?
That'd be great.
Can we
Are
do
we
that?
definitely good on one? I am
That first
for
one,
appeal.
we're agreeing appeal.
You're okay
Yes.
with
So
appeal?
we're all agreeing
Okay.
with appeal.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Yes, I'd
Yeah.
like to get 2
Yeah.
out of the 3 would be good. If we
Yes.
can get the third one done, that'd be
All righty.
fabulous.
I think it's, the difference that I'm understanding, we can go through it, is who schedules, who's in charge of scheduling and canceling meetings. And I can only attest to the way, I've seen it for almost the last 3 years. It's a joint decision.
We do. We
It's-
just, me and the city manager, we first find out dates. I get with Megan. She lets me know the city manager's calendar. It's a joint effort in scheduling meetings.
Right.
And then when we come up with dates that we're available, we find out from Rob Essenfelder, the dates that's here available, and then so what Laura does, my assistant, she puts out to you all to find out if of all those dates and times that you're available, and then from that, where everybody can be together, we pick a date, and that's how it's always been. And then if we need to cancel a meeting, the city, if something happens and somebody called or whatever, and I think we
All the
work
meetings
together
have
on
been
that.
scheduled here.
Yeah.
Since I've been here.
Yeah.
They've all been scheduled at these meetings, and that's from my perspective,
Right.
that's the
No
best way to
meeting
do it
time,
because
yeah.
everyone is present.
So he's
Special
saying this-
meetings.
he's
I mean,
saying that
special
what you're
meetings.
saying then is the Civil Service Commission makes a decision on what content will be there. That doesn't mean we don't call you and
You
say, hey.
still set
look,
meetings
yeah.
here, but if something should come up, is what I was talking about outside of that. When she was saying who schedules what, you do schedule, the city manager is correct. But if something should come up and the city manager has something that he needs to get addressed, because we have a budget and say, hey, we need to talk about this or whatever, and then we can contact you, we'll come up with some dates and let you know and try to get something together. It's a collaborative effort.
The issue I'm concerned with, and that's when I look through the historical data, there were significant delays in meetings, and it was because the city manager called it off. That's not you, Mr. Gomez, all right?
Yeah.
But
Correct.
it's-
That was happening in the past.
That has happened more than one
Yeah.
time. So the city manager by himself or herself should not be able to cancel our meetings. I really truly believe that the chair or the vice chair, however the case is, needs to be in that loop. I
Correct, I
think
agree
they
with
are the ones that should make a decision to
And I
cancel a
think the
meeting.
language says that,
It's-
that the chair,
The language right now says that that it's the city manager that makes a determination of what we have in it, when we have it, and whether or not they can cancel the meeting.
so
And right now, you all come up with your own list of items, but like
We
I
need-
said, there's times where the city manager may have a pressing item that he wants to address, and that's
Then
different.
absolutely,
we-
he should
can-
bring it
that's-
forward.
Can we then get to the specific areas and because I think
That's-
philosophically,
Sec-
we're.
That's what we're
Section
talking about.
2
Who
point-
can,
yeah, he has a
number
question
3,
here.
schedule cancel meetings with CSC chair approval, clerk providing.
I'm
It's-
sorry, what page? Where
this
are
is-
you?
Refer to in the packet if you don't mind, the specific
I'm
link.
talking about her PowerPoint.
Well, let's talk,
Oh, you're looking at that. I'm
yes.
sorry, I'm not looking
I
at the
wanna
same
see
thing.
Yes,
All
your
right.
proposed
I
changes. So
apologize.
show me where. that's
Where are
all
you
right.
guys at? Because I don't know where that's at on this.
So I guess just start from the beginning and tell us each area he
Okay.
calls it out.
Well, when we look at page 11, all right, page 11 is the first of mine. You have that red section there.
Yes, sir.
That
Yep.
does not need to be in this. That was for me in my notes. All right, that was for me in my notes. All right, I need to be able to compare with the other one.
So 2-127G is what I'm looking at.
Yes.
And it's written to say, members of the Civil Service Commission shall schedule in advance quarterly meetings. However, if the chair, in consultation with the city manager, determines that there are no agenda items requiring a scheduled meeting, the chair is authorized to cancel the scheduled meeting and to instruct the city clerk acting as ex officio secretary to notify the members of the cancellation. In addition to its scheduled quarterly meetings, the Civil Service Commission shall promptly schedule hearings on employee post-termination appeals. Any other unscheduled meetings may be requested by the city manager or his or her designee to discuss personnel matters which cannot wait until the next regularly scheduled meeting. That's what I have.
In collaboration with the chair of the Civil Service Board, correct?
Well,
Right?
the-
In collaboration with the chair of the Civil Service Board?
No, that's got a line through it.
I don't think that should be
So
removed.
specifically 2-127G, your comment, Jerry, is you want to strike city manager and add the ex officio secretary.
Because honestly, because in that other section of the thing, I realize we're an advisor right now to the manager. I do not want to exclude the manager. I'm trying to be clear of that. But because of past instances, this is not our current manager. Past instances, that city manager has prevented things from happening inside of the commission. So the
But this
city
says-
manager should be able to give us input at all times.
Let's just
But
stick
it's-
with G.
Gee,
If
so
the chair, in consultation with the city manager,
So
just
Jerry's
leave it city
recommend,
manager, not ex officio secretary.
so that's
that
the
the chair-
question. He wants to recommend that be changed.
To the secretary. And I think, no,
But
the
if the-
discussion needs to be with the chair and the city manager, not the clerk is an enabling body.
I agree
The
with that. for-
decision has to be between
I
the
agree with-
chair
yes,
and,
to cancel a meeting. So that makes sense, right? If
if there's no agenda
if there's
items,
no agenda. in
there's
the-
no agenda items?
that's what G
I think it's
talks
the
to.
chair that should be able to cancel that. I think the chair on your own should be able to sit there and say, hey, we don't have anything to talk about. We should
do
be
you
able to
Now
have-
you're
cancel it.
taking the power away from the city
City
manager
manager, which I
also,
don't-
so I
But I don't want
disagree
the
in
city
this
manager to
context.
sit there to be able to say.
But that's not what this is saying. So
Okay.
this is saying that if the chair, in consultation with the city manager, so if the chair says, hey, we have nothing to do, and she has to check with the city manager, and he says, yes, I agree that there's nothing to do, then she has the ability to cancel the meeting.
But it's your decision though, right?
Yes.
Correct.
That's what I want to make
That's-
sure.
Yes,
I
I
want to make
think
sure it's
that
your
first
decision and
sentence-
not
It
the
is.
city manager's decision.
No,
That-
That's,
I
the
agree what he's
language
after.
says, if the chair says that there's no agenda items requiring, and that's based on a consultation with the city manager.
So that the city manager
So
could
we
say,
wanna
hey,
leave
listen,
that
Chair, you're wrong.
As is, that it's not a discussion between the chair and the clerk. It's a discussion, an agreement between the city manager.
I agree. I don't think it should be changed to
all right.
secretary. Are you okay
As
with
long
that?
as
Strike
you
that?
don't lose the authority to cancel it and someone else isn't
Does-
taking it.
Doesn't say that.
There's two instances that I know of that the meetings had to get canceled. One, we had a storm and hurricane.
Yeah.
So naturally, we had to do something. And then, The other one was, people calling in sick. We're not gonna have a quorum. And so we did give the civil service an opportunity to let us know, did you want to just come and discuss something? Discuss your items, you just can't do any consents or voting. And other than that, and they chose to just cancel.
Okay. I think we're good on that.
Good
So
on
can-
that one. Then the next one is very similar. Jerry is proposing that
The ex officio could be taken out, but my concern.
any other unscheduled meetings may be requested by the city manager or his designee
Which, are you looking at
through the Civil Service Commission chair.
this one, right?
So I'm saying
There,
leave it
you're
as is.
still on the same one,
I
okay?
Yeah.
would stick to this.
Stick-
Are we sticking to this?
What I'm trying to understand is where I'm looking for stuff. Am I looking at this one to see what was originally there? Am I looking at this? Because I have stuff added in here, and I want to make sure I'm not getting confused.
Your
on it.
version.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would stick to this.
okay, all right.
And I'm suggesting, you want to have, I think, to me, we stick the scheduled, any unscheduled meetings may be requested by the city manager. You want to change that to the clerk. I think if the city manager wants to contact the chair to schedule a meeting, what's
That's
the
fine.
problem with that?
There is no problem with that. I
Okay,
didn't read
then
it
let's
that way.
leave it.
There is no problem with that.
Okay, then,
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah.
So he's okay, so we're good on that one.
Yeah.
Good on that
Continuing
one.
down.
Okay.
So,
Next, under.
so G requires no changes. Are we in agreement? From
Correct.
the attorney version?
Correct.
Good.
Gee.
The next,
Work with me anyway, because I had to be at the meetings.
Right.
So they'll check
The
to see if
next-
I'm a,
We can't leave you out.
The one that reads G/H is lined out on mine, so that's
Correct.
lined out on everyone's, right?
you want
And then
to,
we go
you
down
want
to
to
I, right?
strike, you want to strike, the city manager shall coordinate with the Civil Service Commission chairperson and the HR Resources Coordinator to choose and set meetings, dates, and time before a meeting is noticed. Well, we've said that's what we do.
That's what you just talked about before that.
Correct. So
The
we're going to
only-
leave that in, and you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that, but typically the way we do it is we're actually talking about in the meeting when we're gonna have a meeting,
Yes.
except for when there's an emergency. I get that.
Correct.
Those
So-
can't be scheduled. Is there any
Well,
way to clarify that?
I mean, honestly, that's kind of a conflict in my opinion. G/H, why is the city manager scheduling our meetings?
That's
Shall
where
I
I'm
don't-
wondering, I
I
think
don't
this should
think
be
that
us.
should be, I think that should be us.
think
Why
that
is
should-
the city manager scheduling our regular meetings if it's our meetings?
That should
And
be us.
the city
Unless it's an
manager
emergency.
shall coordinate
Just
with
the
the
civil
Civil
serv-
Service
Commission.
Commission, strike chairperson.
No, I would suggest that the Civil Service Commission coordinates.
With human
chooses
resources.
Meetings and dates, because we can meet without the city manager, correct?
Yes.
So I would
I'd rather
suggest
have
that
them here, but
the
yes.
city manager is not responsible for our scheduling, it's us. Is that fair? I don't think GH needs to say, is that okay with you if we, I mean, that's how it,
The way we're doing it is we're scheduling it
Yes,
and
this
trying
is
to make
not-
sure everybody
the
else is
city
available.
Can we
Manager
just
should not be
arrange it to
scheduling
say
our
the Civil Service
commission
Commission?
schedules the meetings.
Yes.
With
Yes.
the clerk, honestly.
So guys, if I could,
we find out if everybody's available.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Rob.
Rob.
Go ahead, Rob.
yeah, so if I could maybe rein you in a bit, I think everyone's getting very excited over this. Number one, and it's, the city manager shall coordinate, that's already current language.
Right.
Sure.
I didn't
It
create
does,
it. It's
yeah, that's
current.
fine, but we're reading
It's
through
not.
And
everything
so-
closely.
But hear me out. Why it is worded that way is because your whole thing revolves around the management of the city. And so if the manager is not going to coordinate with you all on your meeting dates, you can say, we're going to meet. We don't care what the manager says, but the manager is the person who has to bring the resources to bear. And if he's on vacation and his HR coordinator's on vacation and whatever, it's going to be a fruitless meeting. So that's why it's written that way. It's not some sort of a power thing. It's just seeking coordination. And if you read it in that sense, I don't know that it's a big deal.
Agreed.
I still believe that what we're doing personally is, what I believe is that we are setting the dates and we're coordinating with you. It's not the city manager coordinating. For a normal meeting of the Civil Service Commission, the 5 of us are doing the coordination. I'd really like it to read that.
So if we
We
just
want to make sure the
switch
manager,
that
and
the
we want to
civil,
make human resources are here.
that the Civil Service Commission chairperson coordinates with the city manager, we just reverse it. Are you okay with that?
Now, the planning commission, they got a certain day and time they meet anyway, and if there's nothing, they cancel the meeting. And y'all can have a certain date and time where you're doing this, and that way you don't have to worry about trying to schedule meetings.
But this
You
is
can come up
different
with your own
because we are
schedule.
here because of personnel issues, and all personnel report up to the city manager. So the city manager is integral in being at our meetings.
I'm going to suggest that we consider bringing this to a wrap. I assume they've been here all day, and it's almost 6 o'clock. So
so
we're an hour or
this-
two, so we might want to find a stopping spot and open.
I don't think there are many other cases except, so we're going to put that one just on hold to think about. And then 2 paragraphs down, Jerry would like to change the city manager, change that to the ex officio secretary and the chairperson of the Civil Service Commission shall coordinate and agree on all agenda items prior to the Civil Service Commission meetings, except that, It just, as I said, I think it should be us and the city manager because we're dealing with personnel issues, and the personnel people do not report to the clerk. The clerk is an enabling organization, but it's the city manager.
The whole idea when I wrote this was, when I made my edits, is that I didn't want the city manager to make our decisions for us, and that I knew that the city clerk is the one that actually coordinates the meetings. So that's what I put there. So the idea when I've done something like this is to assure that we're not taking the authority away from ourselves, we retain it, but yet we don't exclude the city manager or human resources. I do not want to exclude them.
And I'm going to have to agree with Jerry on some of this, because although this is not intended as a power grab, whenever we have some kind of conversation here where we're not in agreement, it usually falls back onto what the charter said and what the rules are. So I would like to make it so that this is in support of us and what we need to accomplish. I do not want to see what just happened for the last year and a half to happen again. And in part, I can understand that that's because meetings got canceled and the city manager, whatever happened to not have the Civil Service Commission meet, I want to prevent that. So if that is it's part of this, then I'd like to consider how we prevent that, because that was a lot of time on all of our behalfs that, was spent. So,
Okay.
so yes, I'd like to reconsider it in the context of not.
The next area is where there's a change from city manager to the secretary is the last paragraph,
Is it the L one? KL one?
KL1.
Okay.
And this has to do, prior to each commission meeting, the city manager and the commission chair shall confer on the agenda and determine if the city's attorney
I'm
would.
missing it.
Yes.
I'm missing
So-
whichever one.
so
Which one are
again-
you saying? Because I'm not seeing it.
Show you down. Bottom, in this area
Okay.
here. So in this one, we're saying that the clerk should decide if the attorney should be in attendance at the meeting. I maintain the city manager is in a better position to determine if
think
the
personally-
attorney should be in.
Personally, I think you should make a determination in consultation with someone else. It shouldn't be the city manager, because in the past, having a city manager, having an attorney was actually the manager's decision, and we went up in the point where, like Miranda was fired, and there was no alternative to it. So it was, and of course, that ties into other issues. When I read this, it says the city attorney shall be the primary legal advisor to the city Civil Service Commission on the matters of municipal law. Okay, that's cool. However, in the event that the Civil Service Commission may require specialized labor and employment counsel, all right, and it goes to read, as of a nature of an attorney is not acceptable to provide, the city may, within established budgets, provide additional specialized counsel. All right? I don't think it should be up to anyone other than us if we're having a problems with our council, whether it's the cities or not. If we're having problems with council, we should not have to go through anyone else. We should be able to go directly to the board or say, we need an attorney to help us. It shouldn't say, I mean, it doesn't matter to me if it's within established budgets. That's up to the Board of Commissioners to make a decision on. The manager should not be involved in making a decision of what attorney's in here. The fact that we need an attorney, I think we all agree with, all right? But it should be our decision that, okay, we're having a problem, we need other counsel. And that should be up to us, because if we, as 5 intelligent people, sit here and say, wait, this doesn't make sense, what's being said, we need to be able to have that authority to say, we need a different person. We need
Can I
that
request that
authority.
I think, yeah, that I agree with you. I think we've identified 4 areas, there might be more, where we're not in agreement about the roles and responsibilities, specifically taking things away from the city manager and giving it to the clerk. So,
A lot of these,
I
I'm going to
think-
agree with you to put it back in the city manager's
Okay.
position.
so can
That's-
I
yeah.
suggest that we've had a lot of really good discussion, that we now put some thought behind these 4 things about city manager or clerk. To me, that's easier. And also put thought behind all the discussion that we did about where do department heads stand. And that we do this at another meeting.
May I ask one more thing? I think it's important not to overlook the fact that we need to be in control of what's happening. For us, for the Civil Service Commission, we do not need to relinquish that to any other person, because otherwise, we lose the ability to make the decisions that need to be made. And I don't want to downplay anyone, because I think we have good people employed here, but we don't want past instances to reoccur should people leave their positions they're currently in. It's our job to make sure that doesn't happen again.
I agree.
I agree with that also.
Okay, so when, we've got a meeting scheduled, and the intent of that was to continue on with the review of the attorney version of the handbook.
What was the date of that?
That's,
That's coming up in September, right?
that is September the,
13th, right before the special meeting, right?
September the 13th
At 3:30 PM,
at
correct?
3:30. Did we want to take that time to continue this?
Yes.
Yes.
And then,
What do we do as far as the joint meeting? How do you notify us what can be done there?
We usually have workshop meetings on the 4th Wednesday of each month, and we could have a meeting earlier on that day, or just let me know the days you're available, and then at the commission meeting next week, I can ask the commission what days they're available.
The workshop
You can come
meetings-
up with some days.
Yeah, the workshop meeting's on the 23rd from 4 to 5 PM. Is that too quick to do a joint?
And that's our last day for our budget workshop as well, and that's at
That's more
4.
important.
But it
That's
doesn't
more
mean
important.
that they can't meet jointly, because we've had joint meetings with civil service where it was all 3 held on the same day. And you can just meet earlier. It's up to you, or you can pick other days let me know other days that you're available. And then, so I can bring it up at the meeting.
23rd, you got so much going on, and this is
Yeah.
going to take, I really think you have a dedicated special meeting
Me
where
too.
this is all it's talked about.
Can we
Correct.
ask for the 30th? Is anybody okay with that?
Are we talking in August or September?
This is August 30th.
You guys wanted to do the 23rd, you mean next week?
no, we're saying 23rd is not,
It's not an
Doable.
option. Yeah. Are you, really, because you
I
have.
can't, no, I cannot do that week. I'm
30th?
in Orlando,
Okay.
doing site work. I can,
Just give me a
remote
few
in.
days. Just, y'all come up with a few of the days, and then we'll find out the best day.
Are we allowed to do that before we leave?
Yeah,
Or is that- Okay,
let's-
all right.
you two.
September 6th, the 13th, they have another special meeting, which I'm sure that has to do with millage, so that's probably not a good idea. Oh, September 13th when we meet beforehand. Okay. The 6th or the 20th of September? I'm trying to find Wednesdays because that sounds
Yeah.
like that's the day.
Yeah, that would work for me, the 6th.
And what time frames are you think? Anywhere between 10 and 4?
I mean, what's this is for the joint meeting, is it?
On Wednesdays, I can't be here before 2:15.
4 would work well for me again.
4 would work?
Yeah, that's good.
4 o'clock would be fine with me.
How about others?
The 20th? You want to use that as an alternative?
We've got the 6th and the 20th.
I could be here at 4 o'clock that day too, if that's good for you. You're just, I shouldn't laugh, but I'm looking at her, she's like, she's going all over the
I'm
place here
just trying
looking.
to check, I have field work that's getting scheduled, so it's difficult for me to know that far in advance. I have a set of pipe inspections I have to do, so I mean, can we, is the 6th?
Can we ask for the 6th, and if they say no, then we need to talk at our 13th
Does-
meeting?
Does the, do you have to be on Wednesday night?
No, I was doing that because that's when the board normally meets. Is there a different
Well,
night?
I mean, unfortunately, it's budget season, and so one of my other clients on the 6th and the 20th, they're having their evening budget meetings because Florida law says you got to do that after 5.
They're-
So I wouldn't be able to be in 2 places at once.
Since the 13th is already a meeting, I
Yeah,
don't
we're
want to ask
gonna
for
do
it
it-
on the 14th.
If we're going to do a charter amendment, my first reading at the latest would have to be in November and adopted in December for me to have it on the ballot for March.
Okay,
Okay,
so.
Like I could do it Wednesday the 27th, because
Of,
budget will be
But
over.
that's our budget meeting.
Uh,
how about on the 7th of September or the 14th of September? How about you?
the
7th or the 14th?
the
The
7th,
14th is going to be horrible because they have a long meeting the day before. The BOC does. Can we look at the 7th or,
The 14th, I'm open all day.
the 14th would work for me as well.
14th works for me. I feel with the commissioners because they'll be here for a long day.
This is September 14th?
September 14th. Can we ask for that day at 4?
The
I'm
only-
not here that day.
Say it again?
I'm not here that week of the September 14th.
In this case, what we're trying to talk about is actually doing the charter, and it has to do with authority. It would be nice for Mr. Gomez to be able to have his weigh in on it, but
Definitely.
is it,
As long as I have, when you all meet and get all this taken care of, I would need to have an ordinance to the Board of Commissioners no later than the November meeting. So you got,
I think that we have to have a meeting with Mr. Gomez present.
yeah.
It's just
so you
too
have
crucial.
time.
How about the 11th of September then? Are you not
Not
that
here
week at
that
all?
week,
That week
right.
at all? Sorry about that. The 4th is Labor Day. 6th is not good. 7th is not good. I don't think anybody wants to do it on a Friday, do they? No.
If we have to.
I'm okay, but I don't want you guys to stay late, and that's what it would cost.
Yeah,
You know?
Robin is also out on the 8th in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you for telling us that. The week of the 11th is not good at all. You said Wednesdays are not good for you, is that right, Mr. Eschenfelder?
right now for budget season,
Yeah,
I
at
think.
least
he said.
the ones you were looking at,
Trask could
because
be there.
one of my other municipal clients is doing a budget.
How about the 18th or the 21st?
Either one is fine.
How about you?
Fine.
18th or 21st for you guys?
Zoom in, right, if I have to.
If you come in on Zoom, you can talk, but you can't vote.
I don't think would we be voting on
You
this?
won't be voting
So
You won't
anyway.
be
the
voting.
Board of Commissioners will be
Then
consenting
that's,
on something.
as long as it's later in the day, I should be okay.
I do see something on Robin's calendar on the 24th at 4.
Okay, the 24th is a Sunday.
The 21st, I think, is the date.
Yeah, 21st, sorry.
My first, okay. Can we do the 18th?
18th works for me.
We can do it on Friday too if you want to. Much I don't want to, but.
The 18th is fine.
Yep.
Can we do it on the 18th at 4? Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
And then we just got to ask the board if they're okay with that, right?
Yes.
Boy, that was a long one.
The only way it's gonna
Chair?
get resolved, I think.
Before you close the meeting, I'd like to propose that we ask the city clerk to come up with rules of appeal and look at other communities to see how they go about it. And if she could bring that to us, I'd appreciate it.
I can pull those and we can add it to the list
Okay,
of
thanks.
your other things.
Like Tampa,
I've already
St.
got a lot
Petersburg,
of
stuff
them,
like
but
that? Whether they call them grievance or appeal, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
We would consider it as the same, correct?
I've already have some of those because the civil service before you all, we were working on that when there was a dead stop there as well, I think.
Good suggestion, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Benchmarking is
I
always.
think I heard Rob, were you saying something?
I was just going to say, I've doing labor and employment since 1996. I've got plenty of rules of appeal. I think we just need to have the big discussions first, and it'll be fairly easy to, whatever the Board of Commissioners decides, to back into specifics. But I've got good models as well.
Yeah,
Good.
and I can give
We
you
can,
some.
we can use both.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
we'll
use
just
both, yeah.
Give them to you enough, you can read them for a month and come up with something.
Okay.
That last packet is
So-
still, we still got some reading left on that one.
We got a lot of reading.
So
Lot
our,
of reading.
our next meeting then is going to be held on September the 13th. At that session, we're going to continue on with the attorney version of the handbook, finishing up and then starting at the beginning. And then the other action item is that the clerk is going to check with the Board of Commissioners to see if we can get together for a joint meeting on the 18th at 4 PM to specifically discuss either a charter member, a charter or an ordinance, and who all should be included under our purview. Are we all good
The
with that?
18th or the 6th, we said, right? Was that?
The 6th is not, someone's not available. I don't remember who that was.
Yeah, Rob said Wednesdays in September.
Yeah. he
He's
can't do
That was a
Available.
no. Okay, I mismarked that. Thank
All
you.
that in the staff memo so that the commission, for that meeting, they'll understand what you are, what you've talked about, and give them copies of the minutes and stuff to read.
We'll be there on the, are you saying when you talk about that, you're going to do that on the 13th, right? During that meetings when you discuss that with them? What we're trying
They
to do?
have a meeting next Wednesday,
We can-
and then I.
The
find-
13th.
Yeah.
Would it be wise if any of
They
us
have a
showed up to
regular
that meeting to
meeting.
also say, hey, this is what's going on?
The workshop meeting?
Yeah,
No, we'll just we'll just get a definite time.
okay, all right.
On your meeting. It's not necessary that you come and speak, or else I would have to advertise it that
Right.
you're there.
Got it, I understand now, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other? Good, robust discussion. I don't have to do it, but I am declaring this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Chair Ambler, you
Good
are a
job.
rock star.
Thank you, everybody.